of all is that when there's no sample size, your paper doesn't even get into a meta-analysis. And that's a start to, if your paper gets into a meta-analysis, it's something that you must find very, very happy about, something you tell the world without, or without the sample size, they need to look at it. So first of all, this is where I come from, the most beautiful campus in the world. But I'm humble enough to say it's the most beautiful in Africa. Very humble. But we know it's the best in the world. We just produced the first female vice chancellor in Nigeria. Yeah. This type of story. The first female vice chancellor of India in the 60-year history. And in the 60 years, it's really like an importance. And it is likely going to produce its own also very soon.
Thank you.
Alright, so I'm going to break a number of my rules, and I apologize for this. I'm going to share my own experience. But it was at 9:45 that I realized I have this lecture. So I did a lot of, so I'm going to do a lot of reading rather than sticking to my slides. So please know that in designing a study, the sample size calculation is important. And when you're thinking of sample size calculation, it has to do with the methodology. It also has to do with ethical considerations. And I'll be talking about the ethical considerations as I go on. The ethical consideration is also around the risk of exposure of people unnecessary to harm and the risk of wasting the data. There's no point collecting live data, spending time, spending money, and at the end of the day, it's not useful. These are some of, because there's finite resources. So you must conserve the finite resources and use it as much as possible. Okay, so when reading an article, and the reader should consider the uncertainty about the study I'm reading. Is this something I should believe? Is this finding something I should trust? And where people go to are things around the sample size calculation. They'll read your sample size. There are things about your analysis that will show up straight. That is a problem with your sample size. And I'll be bringing us to that. Okay? So when you do not calculate the sample size, many people will not take your findings serious. There's nothing to be serious about because you don't know how much is power. And we'll also talk about what you do on the page, why when you write. And whenever we talk here, we're talking about Q1, Q2 journals. Nobody should ever finish from this session and ever go publish in the Predator journal. It's a crime for any product of this kind. Okay? Don't even think about it and don't teach it, don't go there. It's a crime. Okay? But when we teach here and you need this boot camp, we are producing people who think nothing less of a Q1, Q2 journal. And that's a problem. Many of the publications in Nigeria are not well rated because you go to the cheap place or you have to build your capacity to be able to write your next paper and think confidently, I can submit this in Lancet. Because you will know the principles that makes it work. I continue to teach about manuscript writing and I tell it's a mindset. When you learn the trick, ironically writing manuscripts as an ABC to it. But to learn the ropes, then you become part of those that do Q1, Q2. And Q3 is less. You do Q2 as the lower because you know that journal will one day become a Q1 journal. Okay, so this is all the principles I need to know. You're doing things before, like I said, you leave the staff for 3 days, and you're like, wow, who is this? How did you? What happened to you? So don't ever, even when you're recruiting convenient samples, you must do sample size calculation. There's no place in research when you're doing biomedical research. Of course, when you're doing qualitative, we do know that sample size, or you're thinking about saturation. But in quantitative research, sample size is fixed, no matter which recruitment procedure you're using, which sampling technique you're using. So your sample size will influence your finding. If it's too small, you're going to have a problem of internal and external validation of the study. If it's too large, also you start to transform very small differences into what is of statistical significant difference, and that might not have clinical significance. So it's too large. As much as possible, what you're doing is wanting to represent your sample. So it's not just the sample size that matters and trying to represent your sample. It's also your sampling strategy. So if your study says, especially if you're doing epidemiological study, and your sample size says you should take 100, it doesn't mean I come here and collect 30, I go downstairs and I collect 30. It's that distribution also. That's why they will read about your sampling size. Sampling. I'm not going there, but as much as possible, your sample size, whatever is your sample, must be distributed in a way that is representative of the sample that you wanted to represent. And I heard Ezechi explaining that yesterday when he was highlighting how there was a sampling of the nurses, I guess, that would show a bias. So you would also be thinking in your sampling about generalizability of the sample size. One of the things I'm sure sometime during this lecture you will go and see about research checklists. There's somebody I referred to you yesterday here. You must be familiar with those research checklists to guide any kind of study you're doing. Once you can follow that, that's the ABC. Once you follow that in terms of quality and quantity, then you will be on the right track in writing appropriately for a Q1, Q2 journal. So sample size needs to be estimated, and there are many sample size estimation tools. But you find that when you do it, there are very basic things, and that when I get to power, we're talking about that. When you do too large a sample, we call it unethical. And usually when you calculate your sample, when you're thinking of ethics, what you calculate is the maximum sample size. You don't talk anymore about minimum sample size. Because when you do minimum sample size, then you go all the way to, and then that's where you have the problem. That you are finished collecting the sample, because your reviewer said go to sample size, then you come back and start to calculate the sample after. You calculate sample at the time you are proposing the study, not after. So, and what you calculate is the maximum sample size, and you can do at most 20% above. So when you see somebody that calculates a sample size of 100 and wants to collect 1,000, that's a problem. There's an ethical issue. Why? Every time you collect a sample, every single time, you will expose your participant to risk. And at some other time, I'm sure this will be discussed, there are 5 different possible risks you would expose your participant to. There is no research that is risk-free. What you have is minimum risk. There is no research at all that is risk-free. So if you can answer your question with 100 participants, why would you expose 200, 300, 400, 500 extra to risk when you're not answering anything extra by doing that additional 1 person? So it's unethical to go overboard with your sample size in the name of trying to make it large. There must be justification for including every single sample you have and justification for excluding anyone. And I'm sure somebody else will be discussing about this. You can't exclude people because you feel you cannot collect their sample. For example, you want to do contraception study in Nigeria, you definitely know from an Nigerian Demographic Health Survey that by 16 years, girls are sexually active. We do very well in Nigeria. That even as low as 9, 10 years are married. And then you decide to collect sample around contraceptive study, and then you collect it at 18 because you don't want parental consent. That study is poorly designed because it's not context specific and it's not addressing that problem. Knowing very well that that data that you get will be interpreted for 9 to 10-year-olds and 15-year-olds that will be using that contraceptive. And sadly, you did not take that peculiarity into consideration. So those are things around justification of sampling. This is not my field. I just wanted to put it here because your sample size will drive the sampling, and it has to do with your inclusion and exclusion criteria. So a too large a sample, please, and everybody likes to there must be a justification. Ethically, you calculate, I repeat that, maximum sample size, and you can only justify a 20% increase in that number. And like I said, even when you're doing large, beyond a number, you start to introduce type 1 error or alpha error where you're going to the other side. Too small a size, of course, is also unscientific because you're going to waste resources. Because it's not going to be useful, and you're going to be telling stories that are not really true. Okay, and non-significant results resulting from a too small a sample size starts to introduce type 2 or false negative error. Because a small sample size can result in patients in the study being inconvenienced with no benefit for the future of that study. Wasting time unethical because you just didn't do what is appropriate to tell us what is truthful. So sample size has to be calculated, and you have software for it. Many of you, when you do your part 2 thesis, you do it by software, but you write all those 22 lines that you say N is equal to this, and you never really calculate. Don't carry it into manuscripts because it's not necessary. Laugh. We read through those parts. Remember that the pages will be 22, and you write all the N is equal to, but what you did was calculate. You just press the button and you got the sample size. It's okay to press the button. Very okay. Okay. I wish our 2 thesis would move into the world where it allows candidates to tell the truth. One of the kind of truths we find in the country is you have this sample, you're going to collect 1,400, and you're not the only one, though. You have 5 of your colleagues that are trained that will collect, but in the exam, you write that you're the only one that did it. So those are the kind of untruthful way of grooming researchers that take the world of lies into the work they do. So we have to resist it and make a change and let truth be truth, because it's okay for multiple people to collect that sample. So assumptions, you have to, when you do your sample size, you put in assumptions into based on evidence actually, into determining the sample size. I want to emphasize here about the pilots, because when you do not have those assumptions, you might have to generate that information. That's why you have to do a pilot, a small pilot, to be able to generate the basic assumptions. You want to do equivalence that doesn't exist of your study, you quickly go a pilot to generate that evidence. I raised this here and I liked it because I did a brief training for a number of girls. There's a girls club, so you're welcome to join the girls club, where we focus on a lot of training girls, appreciating that girls have peculiarities with research. There's a consciousness that girls generally fall behind in research productivity in the universities, and so we have this group that focuses on building that capacity to be able to do better amongst their peers. So it was doing, I think there's somebody told me she was part of the board. This is a good job, yes. So it was there that this question came up, that pilot study and pilot study. And that they do pilot study, not published pilot study. And I thought, well, maybe there isn't an understanding of what pilot is. And pilot is just for you to generate that evidence for your sample size. Pilot is not an implementation design. You run a study with a small number. That's not true. That's not pilot. Pilot is just that I want to generate, the figures that I need to. So you want to, I don't have equivalent figures. I do a pilot and I have an estimate based on my pilot of 100 or 50 or 200 participants, and I do that. Not that I'm running an implementation design. So once you have that, then you can determine your sample size. And the big deal also is to be able to know how well powered your study is to determine an effect size in terms of what you're doing. And once again, I'm doing a lot more language around epidemiology that I'm used to, but I feel that my language can be very well translated to clinical studies. And just to punch in there that I hope that products of this place, there are 2 major things you will do. You will be able to design clinical trials, and you will be able to do whatever it is, at the minimum, do systematic reviews or scoping reviews. Your rating is higher as a researcher when you're doing clinical trials and systematic review. Sadly, in Nigeria, I think we have over 80-something% of our manuscripts produced in the country being epidemiology, and very few clinical trials and systematic reviews. So please break into that field. Do a lot more systematic reviews. You have a ground to start. If you've never done clinical trials, even the four groups, if there's anything you're going to design, let it be experimental. Don't do this epidemiology. Okay, so I'm introducing bias to what you want to do. You have power in number, you have power in resources. Break that ground and design clinical trials, even if it's fast, and rather than do this. Yeah. I think most of them are researching that. There's nobody there that's not a researcher. I'm actually myself. I think it was a screening criteria. They are ready. Yeah, they're all in the university or in the research institution. Yeah, they're not young. They're not really. They're early. They're early because of the number of manuscripts. So they're not. They're not young. They're experienced. That. Yeah, they're young people.
The way you compare with our worker behind
Alright. So, would you know that you confuse? And this is where it becomes very important. Many times, you remember I was talking yesterday about primary objective, secondary objective. This is where it becomes, I want to start distinguishing that. When you do a sample size calculation, the sample size calculation is towards your primary hypothesis. The very primary thing you want to, and I'll give an example. So what your primary hypothesis of the study, so your sample size is determining what the difference is between your primary hypothesis outcome and the primary hypothesis measure. Okay? So like an example, so the primary outcome may be a reduction in the severity of depression. And the way you measure your depression is using the scale, the MIGA scale. So the primary hypothesis may be that the reduction in the MIGA score, which is representing depression, is greater with the use of a drug, a particular drug XYZ, than when you use it with placebo. Because the sample size will be calculated based on depression. That's what you would use. So that is what your outcome would say, and that is what I will interpret from your results. So that becomes your primary objective. Your primary objective is used to determine that sample size. However, because of that measure, you would have had multiple variables. And you know that from your multiple variables that you collected, it's possible to determine suicidality, anxiety, disability, quality of life. This measure now becomes a secondary outcome, a secondary objective, because your sample size was not determined based on any of these other variables. But because this information is available in the data, you can do a secondary analysis, and this becomes your secondary objectives. Okay, so that way you maximize your data. I keep pushing that as a plan. You must maximize the mining of the data, what's possible with your data. So when you're collecting your depression study, it's the same participants you reach. You can collect this other mental health data, but that becomes a second, which means that interpretation of your finding cannot be with certainty for secondary and tertiary objectives. They can only be hypothesis testing. So when you cross-sectional studies, also hypothesis testing. But when you do your clinical research, the depression, the outcome will be a definite outcome. This is definitely the answer. But with secondary outcomes or secondary objectives, then they are hypotheses because the study was not powered to determine that. So the sample size, however, has to be adequately powered, and I will be introducing the issues around power in my subsequent slides. So because a study that only has one sample size, it can be powered only for the primary outcome. And therefore, when you use that data for the analysis of your other secondary outcomes, it might likely be overpowered or underpowered to tell the answer to answer those other objectives. That's why there are just suggestive outcomes when you do them. But very important, many times when I do secondary analysis, what I do is to recalculate the sample size based on my secondary outcome. And when the number of participants can be shown to be adequate to answer that question, then I make that case. Now, if I'm doing a secondary analysis, the sample size is adequate to power my study to determine the difference. So I kind of establish that when I'm doing a secondary objective. But once again, depending on how you want to handle that. I don't know if there's any question at this time. I apologize, I know I speak fast. If I'm speaking too fast, please let me know. He agreed with me I'm speaking too fast. Yes, I have I come with a conflict of interest. I prioritize women wherever I go. I apologize in advance. So if there's any female here that has a question for me, I'm ready. So that I can take any question. Yes, please. Yeah.
Because I was trying to, I know that for most economic studies, I don't really see people calculate when I was going to write the proposal for the microbiome, I looked everywhere trying to get something to do about sample size, and I wrote to someone in the States who suggested that I do a pilot, but I didn't really get it. I was just thinking maybe I'll get people and just do something pilot. I know that pilot maybe I thought it was something that is original. I don't understand it. So hearing you mention it again, would you like to have an understanding of that? And then to see that what do you say about calculating sample sizes when you're doing genomic analysis like that?
I think that's an excellent question. It's not my area of expertise. I'm going to ask straight open to anybody that can answer your question about calculating sample size. But I will only assume I related to basic sciences. I'm sure basic science, when they're doing animals, they also don't calculate sample size. So there are standards in terms of references to the number of animals that you're using. So that you can without you calculating.
Yes.
They have reference numbers rather than sample size. Yes. So they do have formulas.
They are formulas for animals. Depending on the study design.
Okay, but I know like qualitative. I mean, you don't calculate sample size, not qualitative. So I don't know what happens in the world of genomics. But I want to assume that if you was an expert who says towards pilots, there's a place for sample size calculation for that person. Because what happens is that I want to do what's your love, darling? You watch what in oncology? Breast cancer. Oh yes. Okay, so this is the expert in prostate cancer. So they're the first person who wants to do prostate cancer in Nigeria. Okay? And there's nothing on prevalence. So what you do is that you do your 100 people or 200 people. That's not what your sample size is. You just pull 200 people and check the prevalence of prostate cancer. And then you can use that to calculate your sample size.
So the prevalence is 200%. So let's say it's 50%. So that's what I use.
To calculate, yes. There are many times also, if I use this arbitrary figure when there's nothing known, it's just that it kind of increases the, do the thing to be a lot more ethical in terms of the recruitment. So if it was 50, though usually when there's no sample size present, what you do is this 50%. You put it in your calculation in the absence of nothing, you do the 50. But try to improve the precision, especially if you're going to do a clinical trial, especially in not epidemiology, you would want to do a pilot to have an idea of what the prevalence is. And that data goes into your. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I think for genetic and genomic studies, it's typically not different from other types of sample sizes. All you need to know is what the appropriate formula for your study design. And you have to actually know the type of study design you are doing. Is it a GWAS study? Is it a single chain study that you are doing? And there are applications online. All of them is quantum, depending on what you want to calculate. But what you will need is the allele frequency of that series that you are interested in to calculate, to put into the model to calculate your sample size. But there are formula that you can use.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am.
You also mentioned how calculating sample sizes after you are finished with
work. Yeah.
So I currently have one of the manuscripts on the review I told you about yesterday, and it was a case study of COVID-19 in Africa. So by the time we calculated the sample size, it was running into, I think about 20,000 or thereabouts, and how are we going to do this? During COVID, it was online study though, and we couldn't get a domain just as host to be able to have a wider coverage because it was more budget. And so we had to send it ourselves, the research team, and we had about 1,500 or thereabouts from about something countries. So after the reviewer came back with sample size calculation and also suggested that since it was an online study, it would be on what it's not correct to say Africa, so educated Africans. So we had to go back, look at of course, mostly postgraduate students and PhD holders. So we had to look at our cohorts, who are the people that responded, and we saw that most of them were educated. So we now calculated sample size for educated sub-Saharan Africans. So just had to be persons from North Africa. So we excluded them. We had to do everything over again. It took us like 6 months for that review to go back. So I'm just wondering, ethically.
All right, ethically, you calculate sample size before you do your study. That's the ethics. Okay? Yeah, what you do after? Yes, and all of us might have our stories about how we have our lenses and go back. I'll give my own study and where we collected online studies, and we do, because we collected, when we're writing the paper, we do, because we're using different supports, we do calculation. But once I get to my discussion, I tell them about recalculating the sample size based on what I found, and that was underpowered, so they should know it was underpowered. But this was the assumption that failed, and that's because we're doing secondary analysis of most of the study, of the data that came. So because we calculated the primary outcome, when we got to the discussion, one of the big things I wrote there was that, look, we calculated at this point and noted that this sample is underrepresented, was supposed to say. So please be, be cautious in the interpretation. Okay, so that's our doing it after. But the right thing is you do it before you get over the field. Because if you don't do it before the field, how do you know what you're doing? Because it affects your recruitment strategy. So you have to do it before. That's the right. All right. Okay, any other question? I have no question.
Thank you very much.
Oh, somebody said yes. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Since I'm calculating our sample size, how do you know that the power is additive?
I'll get there. I'm not there yet. I'll get there to power. About determining the power, yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I want to find out, sometimes is random sampling acceptable in research? Or sometimes it's random sampling, just sample at random and then analyze it.
Depending on what you call random. Random is a very scientific thing. But when you have a convenient sample, that's a different story. Okay? So when you do random, that's what you should do. That's the right thing. But a convenient sample has its own world of limitations, and you must be ready. And that's what happens. Anywhere you're in an online, it's skewed. You are not talking about the generalized population. You definitely are dealing with people who cannot the internet. And definitely those are people who are elites to high socioeconomic. But when you are doing random, you must find a way of ensuring that every strata of the population you're representing is the data is captured. You can't do that with an online. Or if you do, if I just collect, my sample is 100, I collected the 30, you're going to have a regular getting 60. That's not, it's not random. So it cannot represent, so it can represent you. Okay? So that's the difference. And there's a lot of caution when you have a non-representation, because your critical thing about your research is generalizability. If your sample cannot be generalized, you then let us know. It is, but that's why you can't do an hospital-based study and tell me you're doing a Nigerian study. Because your hospital-based sample is very biased, extremely biased. It's people that need it that come. So if you do an hospital-based study, then you let us know it's an hospital-based, but don't say that is Nigeria, because it's not. And the hospital kind of plans to get in Ibadan is different from the kind of plans to get in Ilorin. So your study is hospital Ibadan representation. Are we communicating? Have I answered all the sugar tests? When I finish all of them, I'll come to you. Why are you not doing it? One more from here. I'll give you.
When you said you can't generalize hospital-based results, there are some hospitals, like you say, for instance, where people from all over Nigeria attend the hospital.
So how you generalize out of me as well? It's a patient. That's hospital. It's your hospital-based. It's not Nigeria. It's only sick people. It's not even sick. It's not even sick people. It's the ones that are not here that are not sick. So how can you can't even generalize it to all of us that are sick. So your patients have been very dying to write it there. So when you write it, it's not Nigeria. It's hospital-based. And then when you say it's UK, you don't have meaning. I mean the people that are about to die. I guess You see, everybody knows. When you see it, just think about it. When you have gone around your wall, and you have no solution, then you don't listen. What do you do? All right, my man, don't move.
I was actually born by a woman, so I'm also married to a woman.
Are you serious?
And I had a daughter, so it's qualified, very qualified to ask questions.
Okay.
My question is that if you want to do a study and the population that you have access to is quite limited, so you have calculated the sample size is 400, but the people that I have that fits that frame, that sample frame, within where I am, even all around the entire country, it's just 12. It's not just two.
It's just
the
12.
prevalence that have been calculated in other places. So what do I do?
Well, I'm going to have to throw this open. Let me ask, then I ask the elders who can answer this kind of question.
I think the answer is if we do everybody in my previous. If the people, so you sample everyone that had the illness who consented, that's what you will describe. So there will be no basis for sample size calculation. It's a limited number of people, and all those who consented are included sequentially in a way that is fair. Definitely. But I was just going to say, how you give I'm not a knowledge. Yeah, I'm going to say that, kind of people will have the chance to say that when you talk about pilot and data you can use, remember that there are a lot of data repositories across the world now. Or everything they can think of, genomics, there are lots of repositories. I serve on the Oxford IDO data repository access committee because I did contribute to it in the past, so when they are looking for an applicant to do it. So people write from all over the world, ask for data, and they can calculate sample size ab initio to generate data for all these big databases and write on any no matter how sophisticated you want it to be. So it's good to be aware of that. So if you wanted to have an idea of what is happening, maybe like in leishmaniasis, I think I don't have this last database on it. They can go and once online and see what is on either. All the studies they've done before. And it looks like what you can do. Then you apply. And I'm sure they are in every country in the world when they do research. So my thinking is that we should not limit it to do your own pilots. We can find data elsewhere that you can analyze at its value. And that may now inform your sample size calculation. If you have to still do the research after analyzing this data set from elsewhere.
Thank you. I don't know if there's any question, but I'll answer your question why I feel that scenario is likely to be impossible. Because when you calculate the sample size, you put a prevalence of your population. Even when you're going online, they tell you what's the size of your population. Okay? So if you already asked for a portion of your predicted population, it's very unlikely, extremely unlikely, that you would now generate a sample size that is larger. Because you already entered those data, those issues. And when you asked for equivalence, you didn't say 100% or 120. You put 34, 55, 22. So it would be of your population. So it's not likely, except you go to do something that is outside. You didn't put the parameters appropriately. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask, Prof talked about using different sample size calculation based on your designers. So I want you to share with us assumption for using.
Okay, this is the statistician. Please go after him. I confess I'm not a statistician. I'm sharing with you, but the truth is that depending on your design, there are different sample size. I can't answer that. I'm not proficient. Yeah.
Any of our
Yes. Somebody. Yes.
I can show some of those assumptions actually.
Yes. I thought I'm not there.
You mentioned. I think also the assumption you said people consider whenever.
Yes.
Actually put it on the.
Yeah. I put it, but I was not there. Yeah.
What you can't do is to tell them the statistical method of doing so. But you mentioned some of those assumptions that will go into, yes, I think that was where I was mention some of those.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Well,
sir.
I just contribute to this discussion about you need 400 people to have a stable estimate of whatever you are deriving, and you only have access to 300 people.
Yeah.
You can't manufacture the remaining 100. So you do the 300.
Yeah.
But in your discussion, you are going to make it clear that the estimate is likely to not be very stable or very close to reality or so, because actually you will have needed 400. So that's all. I mean, that's the fact remains that 300 is what you have. 400 is what is likely to give you from the assumption that you have made, or other people have studied, that a stable estimate for this kind of prevalence is only likely when you have at least 400. But you have 300, it means what your estimates are likely to be there. So you mentioned that in the
discussion.
the limitation of this.
And just to add, thank you, sir, that if you kind of just run into that kind of problem, maybe you didn't use a prevalence data in the country. Maybe that might be a reason to do a pilot. Maybe. So you'll explore that. At the end of the day, of course, it's your narrative that sells you. Yes, sir.
So, sir,
Can you also collaborate with other organizations?
I think it was meaning that if you define that I want to do NIMA study center, and the estimated sample for NIMA study center is 400, but he has only 300. So for NIMA studies, yeah, you might not be able to do it. It's just limited by that. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I do remember that you made mention that the sample size you calculate is the maximum.
Yes, sir.
And you gave an idea of how you can go higher than that.
No, I said the maximum plus,
Yes.
not beyond 20%.
Or 20%.
Yes, sir.
Now, I want to ask how lower can we go?
And that's, I'll be talking about power. I'll be talking about power. But just to answer the least, the lower is 15, acceptable is 15%. But when I get to power, you'll understand that a little more. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. So, along the way, you will help me give me a solution to this issue, whereby you calculate your maximum sample size, and then you come up with your p-value and the rest, and then a reviewer tells you that he feels like, because you've done maybe multiple cross-tabulations and the rest, that he feels like issue of type 1, type 2 error that it has entered. And so someone told me that I have to do Morenike correction to reduce the error and etc. So
Excellent, yes. I think your reviewer is a brilliant reviewer. He's a very brilliant reviewer. Because what happens is many times, we said there are different ways of calculating sample size. If you are going to do sub-analysis, you have to get the sample size that allows you for sub-analysis. And I'll explain that. I remember I have a mentee right now who's doing a study. And then, okay, so this is the specific problem. She's doing an oral health study and she's calculating, she's going to compare between groups, but she's recruiting children aged to 16. Then I told her that that's going to be a problem because children at age 8 to 11 are in the mixed dentition. They normally routinely have oral health, poor oral hygiene because they are changing their teeth. So that's a compromise. It is either you're going to put it, you can't put it, that's their age. Now if I were you, I'll do age 12 to 16. So she said, oh, another colleague told her that she would do logistic regression, she would take it as age as confounder. I said, well, in my own training of everybody school of thought, you do exclusion criteria. You don't use statistics to eliminate what you can have eliminated at exclusion criteria. However, it's your study. And then she comes, oh, she will do sub-analysis. I said, if you're going to I should do sub-analysis, she will look at age. I said, your sample size is not calculated to do sub-analysis. It's going to be underpowered. Straight, because it's not robust enough for sub-analysis. If you're going to do a sub-analysis, it should have informed your sample size calculation. Do you understand? That is what you saw. And your sample size was not robust to do a sub-analysis. And when you do that, you will get wide confidence intervals. you'll be getting in confidence interval 1 to 28, 1 to 50. Anybody that sees that know that, and then it's not a dependable result. Nobody's going to run with that. So he was wise.
Thank you.
Yes, and you have appropriate sample size calculation. When you're going to do those sub-analysis, you will ask you how many numbers of analysis are you planning. And you have it. If you have about 10 variables or 10, you then things you do. So you must do the sample size properly. Okay? Not this guesswork. Yes, it's really big deal. Thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, I go on to talk about that. Yeah. So I talked about this and explain this and explain that. So when you get a secondary analysis outcome, that usually is known to be exploratory. And please know that even with your clinical trials, there will be primary, there will be secondary, and there's a place for tertiary objectives. So adequate sampling is very important, and that's when you think about the power. And when you're calculating your sample size, you determine the power. It's always put there. You put your N, your equivalent, you put what your power is going to be, and then what your N population and all that. Okay. So it starts by that. So this is what we do. Once again, your power is necessary so as to avoid your type 2 error. And this is what we usually do. You put your 95% or your 99%. Many people that power can use 80%, but 80 ends up in the minimum that people will go. Rarely would you do people doing power. But it is a statistician. If you're doing clinical trial, there's so many parameters that inform decision. That's why you must have, you can't plan a clinical trial without having a statistician in there, or BAO statistician. If you get other statisticians, they don't know this. The BAO statistician is the one. But the minimum usually set is 80%. And when you interpret that result, it tells you that the true effect that you want to find in 100 different studies with an 80% power is only 80 out of every 100 statistical tests that we actually detected. That's the lowest people will go. Most of us use 99% and 95%. In fact, 95 out of 100 statistical tests will actually detect it. That's high enough. But in many clinical trials, you will do 99. A number of clinical trials, not all, a number of them. Most epidemiology have studies. And with 99% power, you find that 99 out of 100 statistical tests, you actually detect them. Especially when you are doing drug trials and you really want to be as close to the truth as possible. Then you increase the statistical power. That's why you do your 95, 90%. That's where you start to detect power. When you don't ensure sufficient power, your study would not be able to detect the true difference. For most part, 80% is usually 99%. On the flip side, when there's too much power, when we're looking at the 99%, means that your test is highly sensitive to tell the true effect, including very small ones. And this may lead to finding statistical significance even in things that may not necessarily be useful. Okay? But that's where, especially when you're doing drug trials, you probably want to get that close. So to balance this program, cons of low versus high statistical power, you might want to use the power analysis that is set up appropriate. That's why most people use 95%. Most people use 95%. Or you will find studies that might do 80%, but there's a basis that fundamentals for all these assumptions. They don't just wake up and say, oh, I like 60%, let me do 60%. You might find 60% actually. When you're looking for really rare differences, you might find that also. But there's a fundamental for it, not don't wake up. But once again, I acknowledge my limitation as a statistician and my inability to help to explain. But there will be people who understand it, and I'm looking for you to support the learning. So once again, power and sample size go hand in hand. That's when they will always ask you. So your sample size said 100, you recruited 70. That means you didn't get 30. It's a big deal. Because when you collect your sample, you're not expected to fall less than 15%. Once you're falling more than 50% of your planned recruitment study population, you must show that the participant that fell out of the study was not different from those that are retained. why you must collect data about those that you want. So if people are not, are not enrolling, you ask, I want to enroll, and they say, no, it's important to collect data of people that are not enrolling. The about stats. Okay, you're not enrolled, okay, can I have your name and all that. Though there are also designs where you say if you lose them, you will be put as a replacement. You must be very clear about what you did in terms of enrollment. But it's important that you let us know who did enroll. But if you're going to collect 80 and you've now collected 70, that is likely to be an underpowered study. And nobody will take it for its onions. What you're going to just get is a suggestion of what is likely to be. And inadequate sample size starts to show up with your confidence interval. Once you have a confidence interval of 1 to 50, 1 to 80, 1 to 8, 1 to, it's wide. It's 10. Even if you get p-value, and if you know in the world of where you are now, the big deal is the confidence interval. So there's no your statistical significance. You can get very wide interval like this p is equal to 0.04. It's not the p. And you can get very good confidence interval and the p is 0.07. I'm wrong with that answer. It's not the p that's the big deal, it's the confidence interval. And once your sample is poorly powered, your sample size is not adequate. And that's why when you start doing sub-analysis of a sample that was not recruited, taking care of sub-analysis, you're going to have that problem. And then you get your p-value, you're happy, but any serious person will look at the confidence interval. And like I said, even when I write, I might make a story of the confidence interval when it's very tight, even when I'm not seeing it. Okay. I'm through with sample size. Any other lady that has a question? All right. Yeah, that's the lady. That's the lady. All right. Okay. Let me do the first, second, and third. Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Max. My question is, what is exactly the difference between the confidence level and power?
Well, the confidence level you would see, your power is what you use to determine your sample size. You don't see your power, but you will tell, okay, so when I powered the study to detect a 0.01 difference, my sample size was 100. Okay? And then I do my calculation. Because when you're doing your sample size, you want to talk about effect size. Then I do my logistic regression and then I have my confidence interval. If it's properly, if your sample size, it's your power that you use to determine your sample size. So once the sample size is adequate, you will find that your confidence interval is not wide. Once the confidence interval starts to become wide, confidence interval starts to tell you about the effect size. Okay. That's how you adjust and upgrade your PR or full stop. Once the confidence starts wide, it's telling you that it's overpowered. The sample size was not high. That's the tells SAP. I don't know if I helped you in any way. I'm sorry if I confused you more. Have you a statistician?
For instance, in most of the researches we do, when you say that your confidence level is 95%,
no, you won't say that. You say you will look for your confidence level. It's not likely to say that. You would likely say in your statistical analysis, you will have an N, you have a power, your power that you say is 95% or 0.05. Not confidence level. I hope I'm not wrong. I don't think you calculate sample size as different. I might be wrong, but I can't remember it. I'm very stuck in my head.
Thank you.
Yes. But your power tells about your sample size. Your confidence interval is an outcome of an analysis. So when you do your logistic regression, your regression analysis, you start to see confidence interval. You don't see it when you're doing the power. It's when you get the results on your stats. The effect of what you power. Does it help a little? I'm sure there's a statistician. Yes, anybody that wants to know. Yes, sir.
So if you have done a very good study, your p-value is statistically significant, and you think you have, and your confidence interval will be appropriate. But if your study is not very underpowered, your p-value will be significant. But someone who will take a closer look will look at the confidence interval and realize they did not align. And that's how to detect a study that obviously look
Good.
standard, but the confidence interval will tell someone that this is on the power line. Thank you.
Well, the confidence interval is the degree of precision of your measure. Any measure you have is never 100% precise. There's always stochastic error. There's some wavering around it. So how wide that is will show how stable or unstable that your value is. There's always a margin of error. There's no way. But your power is to say that what I have here, I have 80% confidence that it is likely to be the true estimate. Or I have 90% confidence that it's likely to be the true estimate. Even that, we still have a margin of error.
Okay. So for example, this is how I need to 80%. You are saying that out of every 100 times I do this statistical result, 80 times I will get this result. When you say 95, so you are improving, the power is higher. Every 100 times I do it. The precision, you're telling the precision, that you only wavering about 5%, unlike the other one you're saying you're wavering about 20%. Unlike 99, I just said you're wavering by 1%. So the highest is, but it's not as if you must go towards majority stops at 9. You can do 90. But there's a lot of, even there are clinical trials that do 60. When they're starting from nothing. Okay, but there are things that drive the determination of the past. Do you understand? Was it help? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Prof. I think we have been able to answer it. But again, now bringing up our plans in my mind. What are we going to report now? I mean, the results. So what is the role of SD, standard deviation, error, and all those ones? So are we now saying that we should focus on confidence interval when we are reporting, or you can still use those ones?
Excellent question. You see, when you calculate your sample, there are two different. Your sample size calculation informs the confidence with which I will take the results. What you do there is determine, how many people should be in the story. When I get my results, the way you discuss the result or interpret it is a different way. I don't know what there are many things that go into that. If I have a specific example. For example, Madam that did online study. The reference group in looking at educational level might be university. And then she showed that those that were secondary school students had lower risk of breast cancer than those that are university. That's the finding. And that confidence interval lets me know how dependent that finding is. Like it's something. I can't run with it and say, secondary school students don't usually have breast cancer. That's how. And what she said was that compared to university, they don't have. Maybe we should compare to primary school. So you can't run around and say, no, secondary school. It is relative to university persons. But how well am I depending on that result? The confidence interval also tells me when it's really close. Like I said, what we're doing is that it's a wavering between. There's no perfect. It can be a point. It's not an S when you're doing your digital regression. If you are doing a chi-square or something, that's when you get your I don't do that one again. So if you're looking at S tells you that would be, when it's wide, then it's not detectable. When it starts, then you know it's detectable. If you're dealing with means and by variant analysis. I was referring to impression analysis, which is a lot more stronger because you will have also addressed confounders, adjusted for confounders at that time of analysis. Am I communicating with you? I don't know if I'm communicating with you, but you. Now, what I have communicated with you.
Let me help you, Morenike. Let me help you too. I think the gentleman there is probably mixing the terminology. Confidence interval, standard error, they all say the same thing. They are all talking about the margin of that depends on which statistics you are using. Like you choose to use either standard error or use standard deviation or use confidence interval. So let's say, for example, You say the mean of something is 1, and the SD is 0.2. That 0.2 means that it can be 1 minus 0.2 or 1 plus 0.2. So it's only that it's not said in that way, but that 0.2 means can be minus or plus. It's like the confidence interval we are talking about. It's just different in language.
Thank you, sir. Yes, number 2. I'll get to you. That was the number 3. Yes, sir.
What I'm hearing here is that, remember, research, and that's what it's a teamwork. You must have a statistician in your team. You must have somebody that, if you are the person, you do the lab, you do the chemical, you see the patient, you can tell the sample size. It's very, very unlikely that your proposal will be very good. But you should have an idea. What they are saying that you should understand the basic concept. Not that you will be the person doing all the calculation, doing the at the beginning stage, you want to do a study, you sit down with your vice statistician. He will tell you, this study design will be a better, or this success, you will do that, will do that. I think that's the message.
I think the point is well made, actually. And Professor Prof mentioned that point at the beginning too. That is this. But she's giving you things from the background of a very accomplished research economist. I must tell you that the thing is that if you are speaking to a statistician and you have no clue, that's possibly going to be 2 people. You don't know what you are thinking, what you want to do. You need to have some idea, and you need to know what kind of interpretation you can give to some of this money. You don't know, you don't need to know how to calculate it, but you need to understand what you need.
All right, so we have
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll start
just a minute, please.
Yeah, I think I just want to find what Prof has said. Going right here, most of the projects we did in the past, I'm not very good at statistics. And what I did was that I got a statistician, right? And then we went through the proposal over and over and again, and she was explaining to me all the areas that have to do with data management, this is that, and that. And of course, by the time we did the test proposal, I was like telling her, this is what you should do, not what you do. So I think it's just taking yourself down to learn. And learning, remember the first lecture from the doc, she showed you a bunch of people climbing on one another's shoe. That is teamwork. What you don't understand, an area you are not very familiar with, get an expert in that area, understudy the person, and with time you build up your capacity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think Prof just said it, but I wanted to suggest too that your study power could have cost implications. Okay? So if you power at 80, that is acceptable globally. Unless you are you're going to the space, 99.9% precision. If you are on the planet and I think something all of us are doing, 80 will be acceptable. But when you get to 95, your cost could double. So there are implications. And for research grant is competitive. But make sure that your study power is not below 80. The margin of error, which is going to talk about, like capital confidence interval, should be minimum, maximum 5% margin of error. It can be lower than that. It can be 2.5%, can be 2%. Again, those have implications for sample size. And like Prof and everyone says, usually you should have an idea. You read, and you read, you then now go to the statistician so that you have make sense of what they are telling you. Because if you don't bring the architect, you won't know the kind of house you want to build. But if you don't bring the statistician appropriately, for instance, you want to do a clinical trial. They have a non-inferiority design, they have an equivalent design, and have a superiority design. For all these three, there are different types of sample size calculation formula. They do, and they research it and know that they want to do a non-inferiority design. So that's why you have to have a knowledge of what these things are. So that when the statistician is talking to you, because he might even know. So if you go to him and you are totally blank, he will do what he knows, and then you can be embarrassed. Thank you.
And if there's anything to say, I have 10 minutes, I have to finish. If there's anything to say, bring your statistician when you're planning. It's not when you are doing the analysis. You will just do what he doesn't know. So you must bring him when you're planning. That's the last question.
Yeah, thank you very much. As touching the sample size calculation,
Yes,
some of us from social sciences and health economics, some of us what we normally do is just to get the ready-made sample size formula and of them. But the one that some of us are familiar with, especially the one I normally use, is Cressy and Morgan 1970. So in 1970, Cressy and Morgan came up with a formula and a table. And in that table, it has the minimum, which is 10, and the maximum, 1 million. That is, if you have a population size of 10, the sample size will be 10. If you have 1 million above 384 is acceptable. And actually, if you plot in the number and into that formula or any of the sample size calculator, you have the chi-square 3.841 and confidence interval. If you plot it, it will give you almost the same. So what I normally do is I just pick up since I know my population, I just okay, my population is up to 1 million, 284 is okay for me, then I reference it. So according to Cressy and Morgan 1970, and I think it's acceptable even Q100 and so that's what I think is okay. Otherwise, you need to show the calculation.
Did you publish that in the Q1 journal?
Not really Q1.
You can't generalize. You can't generalize. Remember, this is what.
Because if you still calculate it, you get the same. That's what I'm
Pull your temper. Pull it. This is what you are letting you. If you want to stick to what you have known before, it's okay. If you want to learn something new in addition to that word, it's okay. That's okay. If you use that and you want, it's okay. But I think for me, what's missing in that is the precision of what you're coming from. Because many times you'll enter the p-value. And the p-value is never the same for diseases, for population.
Science, for social science.
Yeah, I'm not I give five. If you are giving it well, it's okay. But those that don't know it, that's what I'm telling their story. That's what is that?
Oh, yes. Yes, I have to start off here. Prof, you remember the HIV disease study?
Yes.
Funded by. How many times do we go back about sample size calculation? Several times. They will not fund you until you get it right. Science was good. They say it's what they're going to fund. But the post-award, they have to tell us to go and explain the calculation of sample size. How did you arrive at what are the assumptions? Yes, even the assumptions. So it's not a question of, and if you do it like this, you calculate it like this. They will pin you down until you get it right. Because nobody wants to waste the money. They are giving you money, but they don't want their money to be wasted. When you finish, when you now send it to a pure journal, their biostatistician will say, will just tell you that all the calculations, the study was there, not powered enough. So you cannot generalize. They waste their money. So please, don't assume. One of the things I've learned is that when I come to a new place, I've learned all the old things will pass away. I'll push them, and then that's the only way you can allow new things to settle. said, except you are sure that what you are saying is correct, but I can tell you, they will not leave you with sample size. You must get it right. If you are lucky, at the review level, your science is very good, everything very well. It's just a question of sample size. They can tell you to back and forth.
Yeah, I think you just have to ask. The last part of what I wanted to say. We had this back and forth, with them, and then they said we have to go and look at our sample size again. And it has to tally with what we want to do. We go to the extent of getting the statistician in Harvard, because Harvard was part of the team. Our statistician was working here, they were working there, they were comparing those to send to them. They say, no, something is still wrong. Until finally they said to us, your proposal scored very high. We'll fund it, like modify your sample size. I will have to do that. And when we said to them, they say, okay, we're satisfied with this. You can now go ahead. We'll send you the letter of award. So it is very, very critical. Very, very important. Things change. I remember when we were smaller, there used to be this calculator we used to calculate standard deviation and things like that. Those things have changed. So try and move with the time. Thank you.
The beauty there is that you have some beautiful online sample size calculators, which will calculate those things. All these assumptions already made it for you. You just plug in your figure and make a reference to them, and anybody can take it anywhere and get the sample size.
Thank you very much. If you are going for grant, if you are looking for university promotion, you can turn it in now. What we are teaching here is for grants that gets you published in the New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet, BMJ. That's the kind of thing we are teaching your brother. Nature. Because of your that's one. But that one is not getting it. He won't get it. He won't get access. Alright. That's why I was asking where it was used. It's okay. Alright, guys. So I have 5 minutes to finish. So one of the things you need to know is that when we're planning our work, you must have a data management plan. When you're writing proposals, there must be a data management plan. And that data management plan comes as a written SOP. Before you do the projects, you must have a plan. It's not when you have finished a project that you start looking for big value that is significant and then be moving anything. Before it was you group it like this because it's not significant. You now start to rechange it. The plan must follow from where you are coming, and whatever you get is the answer. It's the truth, whether it's significant or not. So that's why you must have a plan, and it's a written plan. There's no way you're going to do a clinical trial or that you don't have a plan. When you're writing the manuscript, you don't have to write everything, or your plan must exist. So it minimizes the potential of errors and it establishes processes. And in addition, the policies about the usage of the data that you generate. There must be policies so that there's consistency. I could always share my own experience, but there must be that. How do others have access? Those are kind of policies. And the data management plan should be prepared by the researchers as they are planning. It's not when the study is done, it's when you are planning. And I remember when we had to develop that, there's no way you do that you don't have a statistician that comes into play at that time. So this is a cycle of planning. You plan, you create an account. I'll explain this shortly. You process, you analyze, you preserve, you share, and please be aware that then you can reuse. And those reviews also has to do with your secondary data analysis. So when you plan, please, with your existing data, address issues around your form consent. If you're planning to reuse data for secondary analysis, please let them sign that you can reuse the data. This is very important because when it comes to secondary analysis, this becomes a challenge. You must do, and then if you did not sign for it and you're doing secondary analysis of the same data, you don't have to go and get informed consent, except it is anonymized, and there are other things around that. But these are things you must plan ahead and get informed. That look beyond this primary objective. I'll be doing this to get analysis from the study, and then you do the things around cost and repair. And Prof has very well shared how the sample size affects cost. But once again, your power should never be less than 80%. That's why when you determine power and then your recruitment starts to fall, you're starting to undermine your power. Your recruitment number starts to fall, then it's a problem. You create, that means you produce your data and organize, third-party data. All the way you're going to generate data, that it's about patient. Then you put them plan, who's going to go to the field, how you're going to collect, how you're going to enter. But this all matters because we're talking about data quality. And that's when you're writing your manuscript, you must show how you ensure your data quality. All these things matter. How you generated it. That's the heading. Then you process it, you convert it into digital form, you check, you validate, you clean, you record, you anonymize. You created your data set. And that's because it becomes very important because you're going to have to start learning that your data set has to go into the public space. So you have to ensure that you create a data set that is accessible publicly. And of course you analyze, and in your analysis plan you're talking about your publication, intellectual output, intellectual property issues, and you're addressing that. And then you preserve. Know that there are public spaces where you put your data now and you have a DOI. Data is a public thing. They will ask you, if there's no way you're going to a keyword filter, and they're not asking you where the public repository is, except you're justifying why it is not yet time for you to put it in the public space. Okay? And that's so that you can be able to share. Thinking about the ethics, IP consideration, you get a DOI, and it's available. And anybody can reuse it, including yourself. I think that's second data analysis. Okay? So this is a bit, I have to rush that, but I feel it's something you can read and study, but data management is very important. When you're writing your proposal, you must have a data management plan as well as an analysis plan. An analysis plan is never a two-line that you write in your TC2. That one that you wrote in your TC2 cannot get you any grants. That's you do SPSS and then the statistical analysis. The second sentence is a giving confine p-value. That one will get you a grant. And get you your part 2, but you can't get you a grant. It's a plan, and you must write it. And many times if you're doing a clinical trial, you have a plan, a written plan that is not 2, 3, 4 pages, that is looking about how you're going to manage your data and make it in place. And then there's also another SOP that talks about how you use pay people access. If you want to use, this is how you go about it. If somebody explains how wants to use, this is how you go about it. And this is what works. Yeah, I made my 5 minutes, right? Or I overstretched.
No.
I'm not going to say 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. The round of applause. Entertain 2 questions for the last part. If there's any area to clarify, if there are any. I'm not biased here, so whoever it is on
He has no confidence.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. I don't know if it's time to ask this question. I'm making an attempt to look at how to use Prof talked about a lot of data repository data, especially in DHS. But I don't know if thinking through how to use those.
I think Prof is the best person. I don't know if he's going to do it.
How to use
how to assess it. It's not how to use it. It's how to assess it. I mean, it's not how to use it because it's when you assess it that you
assess and use. I've never done any, but one of the things that figured.
Okay, I think I'll talk to him about assess. For you to assess, there must be a plan. What you want to use it for? What is your analysis? Your data analysis plan? What is it that you want to do? You must have a protocol. You must. That's the understanding. I don't know if it's different or anything. You must have that when I get this is my protocol for this analysis that I'm going to get, and all you need is to get it. That get does not help you to use it. It's the getting that is the Prof by count, but use is you that will know what it is. Many times when you're going to assess it, they will ask you for what you want to use it for. So you must have developed a plan for use of the public accessible data. There's so many other public accessible data that you don't need permission. they're all there. The ones from UN, WHO, they're all there. You download. But I think DHIS, NDA, okay, it's a DHS because you can want to collect from Nigeria, Ghana, everybody. You can want to collect from so many countries as it's happening. So it's the DHS. When you put N, it's Nigeria. And I think GBD, Global Body of Disease, they also have very great data. But those two, I think, I'm aware you might need permission to use their data.
Yeah, the one I talked about is the infectious disease data observatory. It has got data on infectious diseases, mostly like malaria, all these NTDs. For them are clinical trials. So, and you have to write a research plan. It's online. You just Google IDO, IGP0. It's an Oxford University site, but it holds data mostly from Africa and Asia. So you write just like you write a research. There's a template. You complete the template. So PhD students do their PhD purely on data from there. So it's a big loss for us because we try to get the TDR to set up a grant. And because we were not seeing Africans apply for this. So they say TDR should set up a grant for 1 year. People did, the white men did it also. So it's good that you really go and use it. You have good data, so you publish in very high impact journals. So it's simple, the template is simple. As I said, I'm actually trying to approve one from I think it's from Bangladesh. So people just send such applications and then all the members approve remotely and they give the data. The data given for a given time. You have like 1 year, during that 1 year, if you don't do anything on it, then they can indict you. For that period, you can write based on what you have written in your data research plan. It's really good. I think we should try to use it.
And it's the same thing with DHS. I did a work with a colleague, but you must know the variable. You have to apply. And when to apply is, I think it's there. I didn't want, but you must let them, your plan must let them know the variable. So they extract it and send it to you. They don't give you the whole blank. You understand? So that's what you ask. Because you have a plan, that's what you're going to use it for. I don't know if that helps. But there's so many public ones that you don't need permission. There's so many. So just the plan, because that enables them to give you the variables that you want to use. You can use it. Yes, sir.
Okay. For the DHS, it's very easy. Just go to the DHS program. I think I was able to get the data. I have 2009, 2013, 2018, 19 is the latest. It's very easy. I have been most of it.
You just acquire it. There's so much yes. But you acquire, but you let them know the variables, and then they give you the variables. Whichever country. You don't have to be Nigeria. If you want to collect of all the 120 countries in the world, that they have with that.
So thank you very much. Round of applause for the
Somebody decided not to give us our So we'll go through just to refresh our knowledge, what we know about study design. One of the things, I was reading a paper sometime. They reviewed published studies and how many of them used the wrong study design for their work. And the last percentage, almost as high as the 30%. They also pointed out another group that we say they will do a cross-sectional study. But what actually they described is actually not cross-sectional study. They concluded by saying, if you don't know the name of the study, just state clearly what you did. You can be forgiven if you describe exactly what you did without mentioning the name. That you need to mention cross-sectional study, and then you are describing something completely different. So that's a take home. So this is the outline I'm going to follow. I'll throw it out there and say, what do you understand by study design? Can anybody share with us? Study design. In all our discipline, saying study design, study design. And all of you mentioned it during your concept presentation.
Is study design is like the step-by-step approach, or the step-by-step approach that one takes to conduct a research. There are different steps, there are different ways in which a research can be conducted. So the type of sequential activities that we follow to achieve the aim and objectives of the research can be said to be study design.
Thank you.
So it's like framework for the study. The framework and what you follow.
It's like framework, the step-by-step framework. Any other?
Sequential.
Sequential. Sequential. Yes. Any other? Blueprints. Yes. Any other? Structure. Yes. So I agree with most of you, but for me, I say study design is a specific plan which are going to use to conduct what you are studying. That specific plan. Same specific plan for answering the research questions or a hypothesis. So what it means that you are studying design must be linked, but you have research questions and also the hypothesis. If someone, for example, you want to do a quantitative study, and the other question is you want to find about lived experience of people living with HIV, I now say my study design is quantitative. Once someone reads it, that something is what? No. Your research questions should inform your study design. We also need to know that in some studies you do, you might not be able to answer all the research questions with what study design. You might have some studies, you have your big study design, but within that is nested a smaller study to be able to answer that. So you might have combination of study designs to address what you want to do. We'll get there. It's also important to understand that the specific strengths and limitations for each of the studies. Design algorithms. Some people conduct a cross-sectional study and they say they calculate incidence. Can you calculate incidence with a cross-sectional study? But it's common in some of the manuscript you read. I did not see them. Somebody will do a survey study with a cross-sectional study and say the incidence of hypertension is therefore such. You cannot generate incidence from a cross-sectional study. What is the purpose of your research design? Is to provide you the scheme for answering the question you want to ask. The plan, someone mentioned plan, another person mentioned structure, and the strategy you are going to use. Americans call it approach. Americans like using their own different terminology. Your research also helps you to maintain control. It measures what you will use to hold the conditions of the facility for. Because once you have your plan, what it means that all you are going to do will be uniform. Is it not? If you don't have your plan, what you're going to do, you are not likely to be used in what you want to do. I mentioned earlier that plan, strategy, and time and budget is the important features of your research design. Your research design you're going to use will depend on the time you have. It's also depend on your budget, and also have to do with your strategy. If you have 50,000 naira, better for you to do a cultural study and just go. You can't have 50,000 naira and say you want to do a longitudinal study, or you want to do a multi-center study, or you want to do a randomized control trial. So your strategy, the time you have, your budget will depend on the kind of design you also want to use. A good research design should include these elements. Who should describe the subjects, what the variables you want to observe, you are going to measure. When, measures of time when you are going to do them. Where, selection of the settings where you are going to do it. And the role of the investigator. By the time you finish describing your study design and these elements are not clear, the whole should come out clear in that design you want to choose. Who, subjects, what, variables, their role, where, and the measures, time. When selecting a research design, you should consider level of knowledge is very important. If little is known about the subject, you should go for a simple concept. A subject you want to study, very little is known about it. Go for a little concept. Then also, the nature of what you are studying of phenomenon is also important. Is this something you can study in a natural environment or a non-natural environment? That's also what you are going to do. The nature of the purpose of what you want to do. The ethical considerations also decide, like what we were discussing earlier here, about people who want to do is it drug abuse, where you want to do, maybe impersonation, where you want to do create awareness in one group. And because of ethical consideration, maybe what you wanted to do before, you may not be able to do. For example, doing the placebo control trial. In a study or in a disease that already have treatment, you can't do placebo control. Or you want to evaluate some surgical interventions, surgery. It will be difficult for you to do blinded study. Feasibility, time, cost, and your ability to recruit. If you are studying a disease that is very rare and you want to do cross-section, it might take you years. Or if you just do a supplementary study or case control studies, you may be able to have enough numbers. Availability of facility and equipment is also important. That will decide what you want to do. You want to do it in Israel. But you don't have the equipment to do toxicology of the drugs. You get someone from the body, it becomes like what? A multi-center study. You do recruitment on both sides and then do your analysis in the place where, because some studies will not fund equipment. And if you are saying that you don't have equipment, that means they're not going to fund you. But if you already have a center somewhere where the equipment is, you have one site can be a recruitment site, you take sample to that place to analyze. The validity of your data, the design you are going to use, what you are going to do, we need, if you what you want to calculate incidence. You can't go and do cross-sectional study. You must take at least 2 measurements before you're able to do an incident. So what we mean is that you must have at least 2 measurements. So that automatically will change your research design. Your research experience. You've not done a simple one and you say you're going to do step waste. Children use for that. You like that design. Step wedge. Step wedge.
Because it's a part of what you said about ethics.
I agree.
Everybody needs to get it.
But you've not done simple personal study. You want to go and do step wedge and mobile control trial. You will run into problem. Because even describing it, except you have a biostatistician or somebody experienced that is working with you. And then controls, the needs. If you need to have controls, that will also change your design. There are some important questions you will need to ask yourself before you choose the research design. Does it adequately test the hypothesis? That design you want to do, does it adequately that hypothesis you have? You know, there are some questions that have been coming up, some things we've been talking about since today. Research questions, hypothesis. The era of you are doing research, you jump straight to the objectives without research questions. I think that era is gone. Right? Yes. And also to modernity critical framework. Hypothesis you are working with. Does it identify and control all the external factors? The design you are going to do, all the confounders. Remember we talked about the inclusion and exclusion criteria. Yesterday evening, we were doing mock party presentation for Faculty of OMG. And I asked somebody to tell us the difference between exclusion and inclusion criteria. He says one is opposite of the other. and it's an exit exam. I said, I will give you 6 months to go and read it and come back. No, we are laughing. If you see most of the people write, somebody will go to inclusion, he says above 18 years of age. Exclusion, less than 18 years of age. It's not what people write. So it's like if it's you're saying that what people write. It's as if it's inclusion is to ensure you have that population you want, the right population. Also for safety purposes. If you are doing drug trials and all those for safety. While exclusion is to exclude confounders. Those things that will confound their results. And some of you will write refusal to consent as exclusion. If that person is not consenting, he is not even part of that study at all. It's not part of that study, so it cannot be an exclusion. Because for the person needs to consent to actually be, yes, exclusion is someone who ordinarily will qualify for this study, if not because of what you identify. That person has said, I would like to be in this study, but because of what you identify, that's exclusion. Our result generalized. If you finish with that design, almost all of you wanted to do it in your center. Everybody wants to do it in your center. Test we are doing, that sample size is 1,500. Yes. And what we need is to have multi-center across Nigeria. 52. Yes. 32 local governments. 50-50. So recruiting is very easy. But if you have decided to do it in Naima alone, I'm sure by now I'll soon be sweating. But you also need to be careful. Some side got my hand bombs.
That's true. We had to close the design.
Yes. And one of the things I learned quickly, don't use emotion to choose a side. Don't use I know somebody to choose a side. I included my local government in the sites, and they are the worst performing sites. I've learned I will not go there. No, but there's some things you learn. I said I will soon retire. Let me start doing something there so that when I retire, they'll welcome me. But you know, these things will come to you. You have friends, colleagues, who will say, put me on, I want to be in that stuff. If it's not someone that is reliable, please don't. Because the person is going to mess you. There's something we are doing in the HPV. And I gave my friends, who mentioned the place, up north. He said, I want to be this way. Just give me, I will recruit everybody. It's now 1 year, because I'm not recruited one single person. Bring back the cycle brush. They said, no, I will do it tomorrow. So your results have to, if you want to generalize them, you have to purposely do your selections, making sure that you want to about Nigeria. Can the hypothesis be rejected or retained via statistical means by the design you are going to use? Is the design efficient in using available resources? You know, the resources are not infinite, they are limited. You must use the design that will maximize that resources you have. Prof was talking about here. You know, someone will say, if I say I'm going to do power of 90 or 95, that the founders will be very happy with you. But the founders will look at another somebody who has also very good proposal at 8, and then they calculate the cost implication. And they will decide to fund another person. Maybe with that amount of money, they can fund 2 projects instead of 1. So always go for that standard. 8. Yesterday again, the one resident calculated sample size for the study, and then increased it by 100. And I said, what are you trying to do? He said, I want to increase the power of my study. And I said, how? He said, by 100, that must not be increased. I said, do you know, for you to be able to increase power by 1, you need to quadruple your sample size. If your sample size is 1,000, for you to move from 80 to 81, you need to move to 4,000. So what it means that that additional 100 you put in there, money expose people to unnecessary risk, and still you did not achieve your power. He said, I didn't know, I thought if I add on that the power would go up. So looking at type of design, let's view it from, you can view type of design from different points. You can look at from application, where you classify as either basic or pure or applied. Or you look at the objectives, what you want to do, descriptive or exploratory, and then explanatory or correlatory. And then type of information you want to get, is it numerical, quantitative, and qualitative. That's a simple schema, but let's look at them one after the other. Your basic research primarily focused on advancement of knowledge. You want to find the amount of other acid in mosquito net. For now, it might not have application now, but you find out that 1,000 amino acid in mosquito net. For now, that's the basic science. For that now, or just that knowledge. Or years later, somebody might translate it to something else. It's aimed at getting a better understanding of a subject of basic law of nature. Also referred to as basic or fundamental research. Example is a research to determine the chemical composition of organic compounds. That's the basic research. Or research to discover the components of the human DNA. We are just using frontiers of knowledge. Somebody else can take it from there and then apply it. Is there any question so far? Where is contribution? Comments? Go ahead. No, I said it's simple. I said, hold on. I said, if it's something, an area you don't know much about, just go simple. Just go simple concepts. No, that's not with basic research. I'm not simple doesn't mean basic research. For example, if I'll find out now, for example, now I noticed that there's a sudden upsurge of death in the community, of children in the community. The first thing I will do is that I will just go for exploration, just to go and find out what actually happened. That's the first thing I will do. For you to have a clear idea first, before you tackle into. Because when you go there and once there you want to go and do laboratory studies, you end up contaminating yourself or creating problems for yourself. And that's why usually all those field epidemiology, the person when they rush to the place, what? They conduct preliminary exploratory study, which might not, you just give them possible link to what might be associations or not actually causality. It's when it now becomes clearer and clearer, you can now start studying causality. So now I mean, I said you go simple first before you now go deep. Yeah.
So you made mention that when making our design, we should try as much as possible to do with available resources. So I want to ask, is it unrealistic to include that this is not going to be cloudy and treatment and we would love to have a fund for it?
That's what's not available.
Perhaps there is an equipment that will be needed to carry out.
There are some grants that will not fund equipment. There are some equipment grants. So you need to understand. If you don't have the equipment, how can you now show you have expertise in that, what you want to do? Nobody is going to fund you in an area you don't have the skill, except you have a big man who has the skill, who is mentoring you. But there are some grants are purely for equipment, and they will fund it. Like, for example, the American government will not fund a building, a brand new building. But if you build a building up to this level, and say you want to refurbish it, they can fund. So you need to know what the particular agency can fund.
What about applying for grants that you clearly state you have travel opportunities to adapt, that you do that particular aspect of the research?
Yes, there are some what they call capacity grants too, which will allow you to do those things. And also some grants will allow you to book samples to your collaborators who will also be part of that. The most important thing is to read for any grant you are applying for. You have to read for conditions. And that's called circular for grants. You must read it and read it and read it and that this, so that you know everything about it. If possible, go to the website and read the kind of thing they fund. So you must be very careful. Let funds, we let fund that. If you are not sure, find out. You can even call the program officer or write the mail to the program officer, and they will reply you, and they will tell you they will very happy to help you do that. So basically, we try to discover the components of the human being. Because these are basically research. The next one is applied. Research that creates practical solutions for specific problems. We move from the basic and we move to the applied. It focuses on providing practical solution to a specific problem. Solution-oriented requirement. In many cases, applied research will follow research design for basic research. You finish the basic research and somebody want to apply. Yesterday, someone was talking about Morenike leaf. And somebody was talking about sorghum by color. I said, that's plant not here only. At the beginning of HIV, they said it was with that you can cure HIV. So the basic research will just be to note the chemicals in the sorghum by color and their properties before applying it to treat. Example of applied research, and it is going to determine the healing properties of Morenike leaf extracts. You are now applying that basic research to solve a problem. And it is going to determine the side effects of alcohol consumption. These are now, we are now applying the basic knowledge. The next one is exploratory or formulative research. If it's a problem which is not clearly defined, like I mentioned earlier, there is sudden death or blindness following some drink. I want to quickly go there and find out. All these constellations, someone just reported that they noticed that a lot of group of young men are schooling blood. you really want to go there and see, are they, those young men, are they from the particular, are they from the same area? Is there something common among them? Is it the food you've eaten or something? What to pick it? Exploration. You just want to have a better understanding of the existing problem, but will not provide a conclusive result. Answers questions like what, why, and how. When you want to do exploratory research, there are steps to it. It's not a half-hearted thing to do. First, you have to do a review of pertinent literature to have at least an idea. You can also do interviews, and that might help you with generating new hypotheses. And then intensive study of the selected cases. Each of those cases, you do a more detailed review. These are the steps you follow if you want to do an exploration of a new phenomenon or something new that just emerges. The next one is descriptive research, and most of us are. It aims to accurately and systematically describe the population, situation, or phenomenon. What to describe? It can answer what, where, when, and how questions, but not why. It can't tell you why, but it can tell you what, where, when, and how. Researchers do not control or manipulate anything, any environment, only observe and measure them. You just observe, you are not intervening, you are not doing anything. And you just describe what you see. I can come and join this class and pretend I'm in for a part of this training. And when I finish, I can describe there are 40 people who attended this program. Half of them, 50% of them are females, 50% are males. 90% are short, only 10% are tall. Half came by road, and the other one. They're just describing what you've seen. But I will not be able to know why they came by road instead of flying. Is it because some of them refused to pay for their flights? Who is saying yes? Evaluation research, usually what they do in health economics, they want to evaluate the cost implication, economics of a program. They introduce a program, they have to do costing. It's meant for assessing the effectiveness of social or economic schemes implemented. It can be concurrent or periodic or terminal or annual. We are doing a study now in which we are giving mass admission of azithromycin to children in 6 states using various platforms. And the health economics, they are doing this at the research to calculate how much it will cost to deliver azithromycin using those other platforms. That will inform the government which platform that you look at, not only looking at cost, you also look at the coverage. Because one platform might achieve 90% coverage, but it might be too expensive for the government to do. Why another might achieve a coverage of 80 or 85, but almost half the cost of the other. That's the kind of the health economics they do. Research can also be broadly transfer into either quantitative or qualitative, depending on the type of information you sought. If what you sought is numerical data, numbers, that's quantitative research. With that, you can generalize the results from sample to your population. You can generalize. If the sample population is representative of that population, you can generalize. Or qualitative, which is not numerical, purely exploratory most times. You use it to generate hypotheses. Or you can use quantitative to do what? To test your hypothesis. But quantitative, you generate hypothesis which you can test quantitative. Looking at quantitative to classify the first thing you ask is in quantitative, did the investigator assign exposure? If the answer is no, that means it's what? She don't look like Obasanjo. You are just watching, you are not doing anything. But if you assign exposure or intervene, that becomes what? Remember, intervention doesn't have to be drug or injection or surgery. The mere fact that you are talking to one group and not talking to other people, you are already doing what? Intervention. So is the quantitative is what investigators do that determines what? The design. No intervention is observational study. If it intervenes, is what? If now do a random allocation, random, that becomes what? Yes, it becomes what? Control trial. If they are done, it becomes what? And then observational study. If you don't have a comparison group, they are purely what? Descriptive. But once you have a comparison, it becomes what? Analytic. And once the analytic, you look at the direction. If you are measuring exposure and outcome at the same time, the same thing is what? Causation. But if you are moving from exposure, if you are moving from outcome to exposure, is what? The cases have occurred already, outcome, and they are going back to exposure. What does? Case control. But if you are moving from exposure to outcome, is what? Go study. Do I need to go to again? Yes. Oh, that's okay. Okay. For observational, if there's a question, is there a comparison group? If there's no, it's purely descriptive. But if yes, it's analytical. After that, you now look at direction. If you are measuring outcome and exposure at the same time, it's cross-sectional study. But if you have your outcome, for example, ruptured neutrons, and you're now trying to look at the exposure, going back in time, that is what? Case control. But if you are now looking at the risk factors for ruptured neutrons, you are now looking at women who have had more than 5 previous deliveries, and you are following them up and seeing by the time they deliver, how many of them come with ruptured neutrons and what? ruptured their uterus and did not rupture their uterus. We now look at exposure. In each of those groups, ruptured uterus, look at exposure, no exposure, and the other group, exposure, no exposure. That is, we are talking of cohort studies. So you start from the exposure and then move to the outcomes. We've talked about observed study, I don't have to say it. Then I needed to bring this up, but this is the lowest level of evidence. Case reports. How many points? Case reports. How many points? 2. So detailed presentation of a single case. But it has to be something that is what? Rare. Generally what a new or unique, previous undescribed disease, unexpected link between diseases, unexpected new therapeutic events, and adverse events, unexpected. These are the things you can report in the case. We should not completely throw it away. After HIV was on case report, case series before people start. It's not completely out. If you notice something that is unusual, something that is you've not seen before, please quickly cite the literature. And if it's not there, report it. As you are reporting yours, someone else in the neighboring town might also be reporting. By the time 6 or 7 people are reporting it, they know that something is happening. Yeah. So the analytic study we talked about could be ecological, could be case control, cohort, and cross-section. Ecological is also an observational study, but the difference is that with ecological study, we are not talking of individual, we are talking of population. It's an example of observational study defined by the level at which data are analyzed, namely at the population level in the ecological study. You go to a community and observe what is happening, and you report it at the community, not at the individual level, like you do at case control study. Often used to measure prevalence incidence of diseases, particularly when disease is a very rare one. Ecological studies can be classified further into 3: geographic, where you are comparing two populations, or longitudinal, you are measuring a trend over time, or migration, where you are looking at population, place, like our Japan brother was trying to. We also need to be aware of this ecological fallacy. That you notice something at population level. The common one that what in literature is about a city that have high breast cancer. Breast cancer is very high, rate is very high, and their fat consumption is also very high. That at population level. People erroneously say that fat consumption leads to breast cancer. That's an ecological fallacy. Because you are moving something you saw at population level to individual level. In most of the interpretation of our findings we will do, we will commit this fallacy. There's also a reverse or opposite of that of ecological aggregate fallacy. When you are now trying to explore what happened at individual level to population level. Cross-sectional studies, I've talked about it, I don't want to talk about it again. You are here, you are studying population, disease, no disease, and then factor present, factor not present. That's what you do. But all your measurement is done at once. Why do cross-sectional studies? Somebody will ask that. When you want to quickly do a what disease, the population, you want to determine that in the population. The quickest way to do that is by doing a cross-sectional. When you want to compare prevalence of disease in different populations, you need two populations. You can do that quickly at minimal cost, and you determine. Examine trends in disease prevalence or severity over time. Every June, you do your HIV prevalence study in that time. Every June, every year, and you see whether you can see whether it's dropping. Also, when you want to find an association, but not causality. You know one thing that if your sample size is very large, you can always find an association. True or false? True or false? True, yes. If you have maybe 2,000 people here, and a lot of people are wearing yellow, you can find an association between yellow and people who are sleeping in the class. Case control study, we talk about it. They are moving, this is time, they are moving back. Cohorts, just like the name, a group of people who share a common characteristics or experience within a defined time period. You can have a birth cohort or an exposure cohort. Like now, you're already a cohort. So that they will follow you up. From now on, they will follow you up and see how well you are doing. I called the one who did before the COVID, and called, and two of them were the ones that gotten 3 grants. And when he was feeling as if he was not doing well. One was 3 million, another one, he started with a 1 million, 2.5, and 3 million. And when he was telling me I said, no, you are doing well. Before, you don't get anyone. Now you have 3 million, yeah. You are ashamed to say. That means making progress. And another person, a co-PI in an industry grant. So what it means that they are doing what? Baby steps, which is a problem.
Slow and steady.
Slow and steady. I'm sure that person was a co-PI for that industry grant. What it means that by the time they finish that grant, the person will have mature to step into being a PI. Remember, I mentioned this today. If you have not gotten a grant of $50,000 and you finish and retire the money properly, they will not give you 200,000 because they don't know whether you carry the money around it. You are the one to see your track. Go up is the same thing. Here, study population, factor present, factors not present, and then you move forward. Experimental studies defined as observation under what? Controlled conditions. Under controlled conditions. Researcher is active agent rather than a passive observer. Like an observer study. Experimental can further transfer into true experimental, quasi-experimental, and what? Experimental. I won't spend so much time. That will be your assignment. True experimental Three things must be there. Randomization, control, and what? Manipulation. Three. For you to have a true experiment. If any is missing, it becomes what? Passive. Yeah. So also the true experimental can also be what? Post-test only, pre-test, post-test only design. So no four group design. Prof told us yesterday. Say learn from them. Factorial design, randomized block design, and crossover design. You also need to, in that specialty you are working, you have to know which design is appropriate. People in pharmaceutical industry most times use what they call a crossover design. Post-test only. You have the exposure group and this. You are not measuring anything at the beginning. It's only after you expose the report you do your measurement. That's a post-test control design. Pre-test, post-test, you measure at the beginning, treat, expose, and then you again remeasure. The Solomon 4 group test, you are combining the post-test and pre-test. So you have exposure control, you do pre-test for them, treat and then treat one and then do post. The second again group, no pre-test, you treat, no treatment and then post. So Solomon combines pre-test, they have 4 arms. It's a pre-test and the pre-test post-test. Factorial design. Here the researcher manipulates 2 or more independent variables. Normally in typical randomized control trial, you have your 2 groups. You intervene in one and the other one, no intervention. But when you are talking about factorial design, it's not only that, but also the dosage. You might have different doses with children. One arm might be 60 milligrams, another arm will be 40, another arm might be, one will be controlled, another arm will be maybe 120. So not only that you are trying the new drug, you are also looking at the dose effect. So that means you are manipulating more than 2 variables. Non-randomized trial is straightforward. Non-randomization. The big one is randomized control trial. A study designed and randomly assign participants into an experimental group or a control group. The only experimental difference between the control and the experimental group is what? The outcome variable being studied. That's the only difference. Advantage, good randomization will remove population bias. When you do good randomization, and that's why when you are publishing the consult guideline, you must use, if you are doing the randomized control trial, you must report with consult guideline. Please read it up today. Consult at spread. And the first thing the consult will explain to, the guideline explain to you is consult charts. They want to see from the level of screening, eligibility, randomization, follow-up. You have to show the schema. And anybody that drops out of that, you must explain the reason why that person dropped out. clearly. And when you finish that, the next thing again you show is a table comparing the two arms. If you do your randomization properly, there will not be difference between the two. Your everything is random. Baseline should be the same because you randomly assign. But it's rather expensive and time consuming. We are doing a COVID vaccine trial in 6 sites and randomizing and putting in block envelopes and making sure it is something you can do it quickly with your computer, but now to particularize into all those sealed envelopes is a lot of work. I've seen why for my power they contract it out for somebody to do that. But we know now if you contract it out, the money they give us will finish. So we have to do it with me and the vice assistant. Since I'm the PI, but I'm not part of the recruiting team. Field trials. Intervention is tested by a user in a real life setting. Usually when you do your randomized control trial in every town, everything is perfect. You pay participants to come for their site. You call them a week before their visit, 20 days to their visit, and even a night before their visit. Those are perfect, but that doesn't happen in real life. Does it happen? That one usually, if you find the report that the WHO report that malaria vaccine efficacy is 50%. But by the time you go to real world trial, it drops to 17 or 27. It's because of all these compounders. So, but intervention and the field trial settings are designed to be as close as possible to the actual usage. Often involve installing a particular piece of equipment and then monitoring its performance over a period of time. You might be doing a drug trial and the patients you are recruited will not be taking their drug. But when it's 1 week for them to come for a visit, what will they do? They might even take double dose so that when they are coming to you, their blood pressure will drop. But the field trials, they will give them something like a monitor. They will continually use. And that monitor will send a signal to the center. And their blood pressure is monitored on regular basis. I participated in one when I was doing a PhD in Sweden. They wanted to enroll me. I said, no, I'll be going back in less than 2 weeks. They said, no, just check. I said, take it home. I said, when you come back, we'll collect our list. So I was here, and the team was sending signal to them in Sweden. So they were monitoring their daily cardiovascular, blood pressure, heart rate, everything was real time. This is a non-rocket science. Please don't, if you are writing for a grant and you have, and what you are writing is innovative, and you include this, that will not stop them from funding you. They will fund you and still give you money for that. If you show you have experience managing it. If you have not used that kind of thing before and manage the database, you are sure you don't have a center that can manage that data coming. Community trials. The difference between field trials and community trials. In community trials is a community rather than individual. That is a unit of measurement. But in field is the individual that is a unit of measurement. So you can have one intervention community and one control community. It might be something like you want to do something to prevent a new clothes to prevent malaria. What about one clothes, what the pattern design? They say one clothes, they say that the children wear, they won't wear them. And the mosquitoes will be running away from them. Yes, they brought it in Lagos, and they did it somewhere, and after they finished, they wrote their report. Of course, that time, what's the doctor? That was in the Town Foundation, steering committee, former commissioner of Lagos State. Yes, it was the commissioner at that time. And they carried the report and called me and said, please go and look at this result for me. And I'm sure that's why that thing didn't come sit like on the day. Because it was not done properly. They said they did randomized control, double blind. How can you blind? How do you do the blinding? I asked them, how did they do the blind? They couldn't explain. How they do the blind. So there can also be one intervention and multiple control clusters. Maybe in one community you are giving the garment, and another community you are not giving them the garment. But you can't do something like mosquito net. You say you are giving one community mosquito net, and you are not giving to the same community. And you can't say because you are giving them gown, you will not give them mosquito net. They will use the gown and also mosquito net. I hope you know. Hello? You cannot do a control trial now, any trial now. You give some children mosquito net and you will not give the other group. Any committee will not allow it. What you will do, your mosquito net will be baseline. Everybody will get it. Then the additional intervention you want to do will now be the addition. To do research that is powerful. You are hoping that some of those people will call research heroes who will deliberately will not obey your instruction. You know, you've told them when you sleep, you must use mosquito net and you must wear it. There's some people, no matter what you say, they will still not do what? They will not do it. So you are hoping that people will do the same thing. It's the same thing like if you are doing an intervention, or you are doing something to prevent HIV. You can't say because you are looking for who we should convert, you will not give them female condom and male condom. You must give it. Why you are giving the additional drug you are giving? That's the minimum. And you must also talk to them about safe practices. So qualitative research, I must confess, that's not my thought. Maybe children will talk about it. In my PhD was the sixth objective. I moved in there knowing that by the time I get there, the committee will tell me I've done enough. Because my supervisor said I must do a qualitative. So I made it the sixth objective. By the half-time defense, the committee said we finish, go and graduate. I said, thank God. But people who do qualitative, they can't do any other thing. They're not people who do it. But I think the challenge we have in Nigeria is that we are not taught qualitative early. Yeah? We even the social scientists, when they talk about it, don't talk about it with passion. When you see our colleagues outside doing qualitative. So I think there's still some weakness in that. So, qualitative kind of question you answer is why people behave the way they do. How opinions and attitudes are formed. How people are affected by events that go on around them. How and why cultures have developed. The difference between social groups. He was studying pain. My friend was presenting something on pain. It's here. When you mentioned it yesterday, I quickly, as a gynecologist, I said, even in level, pain differs. The house Fulani will not shout pain in level. You will not see them. You will not feel. The only thing you see, at the height of contraction, you see them screen their face, but they will not speak throughout them. They are followed by the Igbos in terms of pain, you find that it was. No, it's not. This is science. It's not emotion. It's not emotion. It's reported. It's because of what happened. Because it has to do with culture. The culture that encourages you to shout and encourage you to shout and say sorry. You are like you grow up with that and you start doing that normal. For people who shout, they see it as something when you are in level, it's normal to shout.
What is expressing the pain?
That's how they express the pain. Even the Igbos who are in Lagos and shout more than the Yorubas. Because they come to Lagos and shouting in Lagos is normal. I'm sure you people say House of Fulani who are also in Lagos. They are likely to also be shouting. So it's trying to tell you how culture can do. And this is how quantitative will tell you. Our quantitative will not be able to tell you why that. They will tell you 80% of Igbos will shout at them. 0% in the House of Fulani and in Yoruba 90%. It won't tell you why. But it's the qualitative that will go behind the numbers to try and find out whether it's cultural. So anybody who have opportunity to learn it, please learn it. It's interesting. So these are 5 categories: ethnography, narrative, phenomenological, grounded theory, and case study. I think it's grounded theory that is the most difficult. You have to go to the field almost. Ethnography is also. Yeah. But you might not grounded theory that you get a theory, you go back again. You finish again, you go back again. There's also, we talk about quantitative and talk about qualitative. But what is advocated now is mixed method. What nice advocated now, you see a lot of studies now have the mixed method, where your research design, you used the two, quantitative and quantitative, in collecting your data, analyzing. At the end of the day, you now triangulate your reports to be able to address a number of issues. To utilize this design effectively, you must understand both quantitative and what? Quantitative. And only very few people are able to combine two of them. So these are the steps to conduct a mixed method study. First, you need to determine if the mixed method study is feasible in that particular project you are doing. You need to determine, is it feasible? After that, you identify a rationale for a mixed method study. You can't just say, I want to do a mixed method. There must be a rationale why you want to do it. After that, identify the data collection strategy and type of design you want to use. For the quantitative, what design are you using? For the quantitative, what design are you using? Then you develop quantitative and qualitative and mixed method questions you are going to use. Then you collect your quantitative and qualitative data. Then analyze data separately or concurrently. And then write the report as one or two phase study. Priority, depending, there are different combinations you can have when you do a mixed method. Some you can start with quantitative and then end up with qualitative. Or some you start with qualitative and end with quantitative. Or you can do both simultaneously or sequentially. When to use the mixed method design, quantitative and qualitative data together provide a better understanding of your research problem than either type by itself. When one type of research cannot address all your research questions. You know, when you are doing your objective, some like I said, if you say to explore, you automatically know that that's going towards quantitative. And when you say to determine, you know it's going to quantitative. So if you have mix up of the two, your objective, you automatically know you are going to do a mixed method. Or you want to build from one exploratory before you move into quantitative. So you need to know. Explore quantitatively, then develop an instrument. Like we talked about yesterday. You want to develop an instrument. You have to go, like Morenike talked to us, you have to go to that community you want to develop instrument for. And then have what? And then focus group or independent group there. After which you now go and do your what? Systematic review. You know, you're already combining. Systematic review is a what? A quantitative research method. Why your idea of focus group discussion is what? Qualitative. So types of mixed method design. You can have a mixed model or a mixed method research. Just look at the subtle difference between them. Mixed model involves qualitative and quantitative being mixed in more than one stage of the study. During the collection phase, you are collecting both data from quantitative and also qualitative. Analysis, the same. But in mixed method research, collection and analysis of quantitative and qualitative are in single study in which data are collected concurrently or sequentially. And only data is integrated at one or more stages of the process. This one is that you are collecting them sequentially as you are doing, you collect data separately, but at different stages of the project. But in this, you are doing them either concurrently or what? Sequentially, as you are going. You also have what they call a multi-method design, different from your mixed method. An example of a multi-method design is a research which we will talk about. You see tomorrow today. In research tomorrow. We will talk more detail about it, so let me know. I'll leave that. I will end up with comparative effective research. Comparative effective research. Usually most of them will do clinical trials. what they report to us usually most times is safe and what? Applications. And now they push it out to us. You see most of the COVID studies, all those COVID vaccines, now people are actually doing real life component effectiveness study. Now people are now doing real. What it means that in case comparative effectiveness study, you will now do a synthesis of evidence from what people have done. Both people who have done phase 3, phase 4. You will look at the pros and cons, and then look at other alternative methods of doing the same thing. And you are now looking at the cost implication of all of them and see before. It's more like, let's say, more like an economic method, not purely what you just sit down and do, but when other people, not to just watch study and not study, you look at other alternative benefits, look at other alternatives of doing the same thing, and then compare them before the decision. You now use that evidence to arrive at a decision whether that particular product is in terms of its utility, or in terms, you can have a drug that is very effective but unaffordable, or a drug that is very effective but the side effect profile is worse than. How many people have taken this anti-malaria drug? I'm trying to remember. Yes. The one you take, you're wondering whether what they are suffering from it, whether the malaria is better. Whether it's not enough, it will probably one question.
We gave it to one child, he said that he said to die.
I took it once, I didn't know, I took it. And it was so bad, I called Professor Jokaman. I said,
you still have last bit. When you take the food dose, it's terrible.
I said, I don't know how I'm feeling. But I had a fever. I took anti-malaria, but I'm getting worse. The man said, did you take this drug? I said, yes, so then laughing. He said, I took it, and I felt the same way. Since that time, I've not taken it. So, in comparative research, you are comparing not just that the drug is very effective, you are looking at all those other variables that determine how usability, how it will be used in real life. So why do we do that? Comparative research is to assist consumers, clinicians, and all stakeholders and policymakers in making informed decisions that will improve healthcare and both provision to them. Whether they should, when you finish a drug analysis, NAFDAC will approve you and say this drug is. But if it's a malaria drug, the malaria control program has to recommend for you to use for control. So those are the things that come into place before they make that decision. So that's what you call comparative effectiveness. Those are all the ingredients you need to make that final decision, different from just the safety and efficacy that go is to provide stakeholders with information that can be used to make decisions about benefits and trade-offs of a particular product. What are the steps you follow in conducting comparative effectiveness research? One is identifying new and emerging clinical interventions. Second, you review and synthesize current medical research in that new product. So you identify gaps between existing medical research and the needed clinical practice. It's not enough for a company to say, we've got a new anti-malaria. You have to compare it with what is existing. They promote and generate new scientific evidence and analytic tools, train and develop clinical researchers, translate and disseminate research findings to diverse stakeholders, and finally, reach out to stakeholders here is listening for to discuss how it will be used. So, in conclusion, I will end up with this summary of the study designs. So you have to look at the terms of application. You talk about pure or basic research and apply. In terms of objectives, you talk about descriptive and exploratory or correlation. And when you look at the type of information you sought, is it numerical or non-numerical, you talk about quantitative and qualitative. And don't forget the mixed method. The material science, there is multi-method, children to talk about it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ezechi. I'm sure there will be need for some clarifications, questions. Let's know the number we're taking. 1, 2, 3. Any more? Prof. All of them are 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, sir, for the presentation. I have a question and is a clarification. The first question is, we usually talk about longitudinal studies. So I don't know where that fits into. So the clarification I have a topic of a manuscript given to me to review, and the title of the manuscript is Effects of ApoE Genotype on Lipid Excursion.
Effect of
ApoE genotype on lipid excursions in elderly Nigerian adults. So, and the person is going to take a pre-sample, a fasting lipid sample, introduce a standard meal to control the variables, then take a post meal sample, that's for lipids again. So after that, the participants will be classified based on the ApoE genotype they have and look for the results of the fasting lipids and the postprandial lipids. So, and it was tagged a cross-sectional study. But from what we've described, I don't think it's a cross-sectional study.
Yes, I agree with you completely. It's not a cross-sectional study. Like I mentioned here, once you do two measurements, cross-sectional studies, you are doing one measurement. Once you do 2 measurements before your intervention and after your intervention, it's no longer a cross-sectional study. If I'm teaching study design, what I normally tell people, I say, I'm standing here, the student. I say, I'm standing here. If I take all my measurements here, that is what? Cross-section. If I move like this in front, it's a curve or what you are calling not you. I'm asking you a question. If where I'm standing and I'm moving back, that is what? Suspected. It's very easy to know. Where I'm standing, I'm taking all my measurements. Remember, in study, measurement doesn't have to be, it must be, I'm seeing him now, I'm supposed to take the ring, take stool, take this and all those. That's one measurement. It might take him, I'm not able to finish school today. He might go home and get the soup from home. That's still measurement 1. So if that is done, that means the exposure and the outcome is measured at the same time. That's possible. But if you collected the sample, intervention, you gave the intervention, and then measure that. It's not possible.
I suppose the reason why the person is confused about is the interval between the administration of fat or whatever the lipid was, and then the outcome assessment. Because it's not a long duration, so that's why it's thinking, oh, that is cross-sectional, just immediately after. But in fact, just like Prof described, it's an experimental study in which you are putting something like that, then see what's going to happen. No matter how long this interval is, it doesn't matter.
Well, please, I would like you to show more light on the fallacy we advocate and the economic.
Yeah. You know, I'm here now, for example, now. I come to Ezechi, and I assess, no, you're not good. And I assess that hypertension is about 50% of patient. And I noticed that all the people also, malaria is 50-60%. So I now said, hypertension is associated with malaria.
I would disagree with you, of course.
So what you're saying is that what you see at the population level, you cannot attribute it to an individual. You cannot generalize to an individual. That's the correlation fallacy. But I never ask you the opposite. Because I've seen a young girl, a woman that was supposed to be in Ondo, and the woman refused. And they didn't slap me. And now I said, every woman in Ondo slapped the man. Do you understand what I said? That's a simple explanation. Yeah?
I do, but I'm just wondering that most often, when we do studies, we extrapolate and say, okay, so it is, okay, let me use my study for instance. I see instability in microsatellite region among breast cancer patients, which is disproportionate to what we see in the Caucasian population. And I'm saying, okay, that breast cancer patients in Nigeria or in West Africa have microsatellite.
I like it. Someone you say, that's the only thing you can say. I like it. You can't say more than that.
Say more than that.
There's a lot of compounding variables that you cannot control. But the best you can say what Prof said, that's not likely. I mean, you can say, plausibly it looks like whatever. You yourself can then put a lot of caveats and say, oh, maybe I am control for this, I am control for that. But extrapolation is just exactly that. It's that you are just speculating. You can't really be sure that you can transpose from one to another. Because there are a lot of other unmeasurable or measured confounding things happening.
Thank you, sir.
Who's the one?
Thank you, sir. My question is still very close to the first question. When you were describing the descriptive study, you have the descriptive, we have the analytical. Is it not possible also to have the longitudinal and cross-sectional under descriptive? Again, I want to ask, like if we have different age group, we want to study something for different age group, and we decided to do it at different age group at the same time. And again, we can do the study focusing on some set of people over a period of time. The ones we are looking at over a period of time, we classify as longitudinal, while we do it at different, with different people of different age groups at the same time. We classify as cross-sectional.
I don't want you to confuse yourself. Two things like this simplifying it. If you take measurements from a participant on more than one occasion, you are no longer talking about cross-sectional stuff. Whether the time limit is 1 second or 2 seconds, and you've done something in between, it's no longer. It's like you've taken collect sample from me today, and in the evening you collect sample from me again. It's no longer cross-sectional. Because you are measuring at 2 time points. Why you cannot put the longitudinal you are talking about? That's why it is also difficult when you are, appointed longitudinal. When you are talking about describing study design, you have to also put it on, are you intervening or not intervening? Are you comparing groups? Once you start analyzing, once you start crossing table, it's no longer descriptive. So that's why you need to be careful when you are lumping longitudinal. I avoid it. I describe what is. But the only thing you know that longitudinal is if you are moving forward. Which some people will tell you whether you are moving forward or you are moving back. Some people will tell you, just like now, case control study before. Once you say case control study, everybody says it is suspected. Some authorities at the methodology are now saying you can have a case control study that is not retrospective. What is important is that describe exactly what you are doing. But just know that cross-sectional studies that at the point, single point, you are taking all your measurements. Cross-section, snapshots. You are taking snapshots. Yeah.
In the occupational studies, 2 of them are inherently analytical, that is the case control and cohorts. But they always have to do some analysis for these 2. The cross-sectional can be purely observational or analytical. But so when you say these are analytical studies, invariably they are referring to either case control or cohort. But sometimes when you have cross-sectional, it could still be analytical or purely descriptive.
Let me just ask one question. Just to make sure that you understand it very well. So let's say you have 100 in a clinic. You say consecutive 100 patients, you are studying them for one particular thing. And they are coming in, you are taking all the measures, you want to show the prevalence of something among them. And then you present that prevalence, purely descriptive. But you may also, within that group, divide them into female and male, and say you want to compare whether the prevalence is higher among female, it's becoming analytic. It's still cross-sectional, you collected the information at the same time. But within that, you have a descriptive prevalence, 10% increase, and then you also say, might it be different between age groups, might it be different between the gender, and all of that. It's analytical. You are going deeper into the description that you are providing. That is exactly what I want to say.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, sir. I just want to cross-check if what I'm thinking is right. Because I believe that each of these categories, a study can take 2 or 3. For instance, it can be descriptive and cross-sectional.
Yes, I mentioned I said in a particular study, you can have more than one design. It depends, ideally, when you finish writing your objective, your specific objectives, each of them you look at whether the sample size first of all, you calculate the sample size for each objective. Is the one that is highest. If you calculate one is 200, one is 1,000, one is the one that have highest, that will be the overall sample size I'm going to use. The essence that if you use the smaller one, you won't be able to answer the question to the other one. When you finish that, you now look at them, which study design will answer that particular question you want to answer. So you can have more than 1 or 2.
The last one I want to cross-check is you can even have an experimental study that is cross-sectional. If you are taking like the one
so you can do analysis, you can in experimental study, you can do a questionnaire study.
No, what?
They cannot be the other way around.
There's a design that is post, you don't take pre. You put the intervention, you only take post data. You still take the data at once. It's still cross-sectional.
No, because you are marching forward. No. Remember you recruited. If you by your design, you decide not to take that sample there. But you recruited, enrolled the side concept. And now you introduce something. Remember you introduce something. That introduction you are introducing and measuring after. It cannot be cross-sectional. Yeah. What I'm trying to say is that when you do experimental study, people also report. They can just tell you report of baseline data of patient enrolled in spoken trial. That's a cross-sectional study. It's not reported.
And for population research, it's sometimes difficult to measure the individual of everybody who have studied. So you take a cross section, but then you do an experiment. So you take a cross section, after 2 years, you measure them. So those are cross-sectional studies, but they are designed to measure this experiment. So you can call that measurement, but they are called actually, that's the only way you can measure that. You couldn't go from house to house because you get everybody nets. And so how can you measure everybody? So you took a sample at the beginning and measure something. That kind was cross-sectional. Then another maybe after 6 months. Sometimes you want to measure like when you give people prophylaxis, people argue that there may be a kind of a drop in the immunity. So you want to after 1 year. So you can make other 5 people that you just take a sample of the children after 1 year and do a cross-sectional. So in that case, you can see you've done a cross-sectional. But if you look at the whole research design, that was just a measuring of the outcome that you're doing. So in that case, it's still not a problem. It's still the same experimental study, but you're taking measurement of the outcome at that time point. A different time point just to see how things are progressed.
Yeah, like if you're working in these very big grants, by the time they calculate, I tell with the Americans, those ones are they publish like this publication is out of fashion. You do the baseline data, you finished. They publish the data. At that time, it's cross-sectional you're publishing. A snapshot. But by the time they are now publishing the work at the end of the study, that's your experimental. Report, yes. Also, they can also measure their incidence. For example, if we do HIV prevalence now at the baseline, and now in year, and you continue following them up and then checking them, like the young, like the eye test, where we are bringing them back every 6 months, and then checking their those ones who are negative, you are following them up and checking their HIV status every 6 months. What it means that at the baseline is prevalence, but as you are now measuring and going, it's now become an incidence. So we can have.
Sorry, Oliver. How you recruit in your sample is different from how you analyze your sample. For sectional or longitudinal or case control, all of that. Those are how you recruit and the kind of follow-up that you are conducting. The analysis you perform on that sample can be descriptive or can be analytic. So if, for example, let's say you have a cohort sample, which means you have followed them for how many, I don't know how many years or how many months. But you can have a descriptive analysis when you recruit them. 10% are women, 20% are men, and all. That's descriptive. If you are now beginning to compare the outcome as they are going on, you are doing analytical comparison. So analysis means you are making some kind of inference. Where that description doesn't mean you are providing an overall picture of what it looks like. So there is a difference, they overlap. But I mean, you can't do case control without being analytic. So there's an overlap between those two kinds of
control.
I was going to say that I don't know what the issues are. But I think that you just needed an appropriate term to describe your study. Yeah. And that is whatever you use in your recruitment of the patients. That's what you should use to describe your study.
Whatever other analysis you do, you don't have to tell there. Anybody who reads what you are doing already knows what's going on. Otherwise, the way you are going, you will want to say descriptive analytic. I think you remember that Professor Ezechi mentioned at the beginning that don't describe what you have done. It's not so much about terminology. What he has provided for us today is a very comprehensive picture so that at your level you understand this. It can be simplified into observational or whatever, but he has provided us with a really rich description. But you are not going to be describing all of these in your paper. It's not that you yourself know what you have done and you can describe what you have done. That's what is important.
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir.
So just to summarize the wife of the master, describe what you've done. It's not the one that is worse that you say you want to do cross-sectional study and you now describe cohort study. But if you describe cross-sectional study without mentioning the name, you will not be penalized. But you describe exactly what you are going to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we did a lot of things, we learned a lot of things. Read more about it and start putting it on proposal. I think our lunch should be ready, but what we need to do is to thank all our presenters, all our I think we have 1 hour for the lunch. We should be here by 3:15. Thank you very much.